Hey, everybody. Welcome to Demystifying Mental Health on blackdoctor.org. I am Dr. Alauna, trauma psychiatrist, and today's episode is one that I am sure that you are going to identify with because this is about election season stress, surviving the uncertainty. And election season self care, in particular, is what we're going to talk about. It's here. We've been on this road. It feels like for a long time, and we know that there's a lot of stress and things going on. There's a lot of chaos, and so it's important for us to center our mental health and our physical wellness in order for us to make it through these really critically challenging times. So we also know that in the Black community, stress is amplified. We're not just navigating our everyday stressors and the everyday racism and other things that we end up having to deal with that is already wasn't being acknowledged. But now we have this constant media cycle feeding us situations that are distressing. Things are, they say in the quiet part out loud these days. Okay. So it's very real. And that's what we're going to talk about today is like how to comprehend what the signals that your body is sending you, but also things that you can do to be healthier because, you know, we can't afford to completely tune out, right? I don't know. Many of you all know me. I am definitely a news junkie and I get my news. And right now there's so many things going on that there is in fact the opportunity to spend a lot of time consuming news and consuming sources that cause us stress and tension and sometimes a feeling of overwhelm. But that can spiral into more severe things like depression, anxiety, or even into physical outcomes like chest pain and other challenges to our body, inflammation, and autoimmune disorders and other things that are directly impacted by the amount of stress that we are experiencing. So today's conversation, it isn't just a feel good chat about self-care. I know we have a lot of people that define self-care differently, but this is about tools that can help you actively get through the next, not just the next 2 weeks, um, but whatever comes after, because we don't 100% know. And we know that uncertainty is traumatic, right? Not knowing, not being able to plan, not being able to fully see what's happening, there is a level of stress and tension that comes in your body. So, we're going to talk about ways to protect your peace and protect your mind in real time. So, I'm excited today because I have a special guest. My guest today is Dr. Alessandra Poroj. She is a self care architect, and she is here to help me also talk through some essentials that are going to help you put some of this into really practical terms because she's actively processing and actively working with people. She's a pharmacist by trade, and so she does also take care of people in that way. But her true expertise is really helping people tap into internal skills that they can use in order to improve their mental outlook. And in fact, rest is one of the things when I first heard her, she was speaking about rest. And I remember thinking, like, I know how to rest. I go to sleep every night. And then she took us through real definition of what rest looked like. And I was like, oh, I really actually don't know that I know what that feels like and looks like and what could be healthy. So I'm excited to get to her. And so welcome to the virtual stage, Dr. Alessandra, joining me today. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Hey, absolutely. Glad to have you. And I appreciate you just taking the time to come and share your expertise on rest with us because it's so funny. I remember thinking like, what can I learn about rest? And then the whole time when you were explaining it, I was like, I've actually never really thought about practically what it means to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so just give us a little bit about your background and what drew you to focusing in on that concept.
Yeah, so like you said, my background is in pharmacy, and I had a very full career that was meaningful, but it was also quite stressful. And I was probably no different than many of my peers of Black women, where we were always striving, working really hard, dotting all of the I's, crossing all of the T's, really focused to make sure that we did everything right. And perfectionism was already part of my personality prior to that, but it was just
Mm-hmm.
amplified. Needless to say, over a span of 20 years, I probably experienced burnout more times than I should admit out loud. And it really got to a point where it was probably a critical life or death situation, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so I made an abrupt pivot, something I had not planned for, and I got out of the work that I was doing. And during that time, I started really getting into some practices, a deep practice of yoga, of meditation, of really being mindful of how I was caring for myself. And out of that evolved this work that I'm now doing, that is centrally focused on creating space for high achieving women to be able to surrender, to let go in a sacred space so that they can experience this deep transformative rest
Mm-hmm.
that impacts not just the physical person,
Mm-hmm.
but it affects your mind, it affects your heart, it
Mm-hmm.
infiltrates all the way down into your spirit. And so it allows women to be able to move differently in the world.
So let's talk about that because that's a perfect introduction to how we can think about the physical and the psychological impacts of stress. So we're talking about election stress today, but this really applies to all stress.
Yeah.
Okay. And as I'm going through these things, while you all as the audience, feel free to comment, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll try to respond to them if we can. But I want to really get into what you said about um, burnout and about how it took you getting into a space where you run into this wall. And I can't tell you how many people, as a trauma psychiatrist, right? People tell me that same story. And I remember thinking years ago, about 7 or 8 years ago, when I first said, I'm going to brand myself as a trauma psychiatrist. I didn't anticipate that it would open the door for so many people to just walk up to me and start telling me their story. But when they did, it was the same pattern. We go so hard at our goals, at our ideas. We're knocking down these walls and challenges. We're experiencing traumas. We're piling them in the closet. We get back up to go do it. And then we don't actually, we get to the point where our body gives out. That's what happened with my body. My body gave out. But for many of us, our mind gets to the point where it's like, I don't want to keep doing this life if I got to do it like this. And to me, that is at the interface of suicidality and all the challenges with substances that many people experience before they go, you know what? Maybe I need to rest.
Hmm.
Maybe it would help me to slow down and actually take the time to connect to my body, to learn processes that a lot of people will call hoodoo. When I first started talking about these things, a lot of people reject mindfulness practices, meditation practices, yoga practices, thinking of it like with the label of, it's Eastern medicine or
Yeah.
it's alternative and those kind of things. I'm here for us to set the record straight. What do you think about mindfulness and meditative practices? Like, should everybody be doing them? Is it just something that we should do when we get burned out? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think, yes, everybody should do them. I think that
Leading question.
I think that the truth of the matter is that if you look at most spiritual practices, most religious practices, they have aspects of meditation, they have aspects of prayer, they have aspects of mindfulness. I come from a background of Christianity, and there are many times in the Bible where the word meditate shows up. right? It's that we have ascribed it to being something negative, and there's no reason for us to do that. You know, you can do all of the protective things that you believe that you need to do. That's fine, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that these practices, they're necessary in the moment, but it's also, there's a cumulative effect. So the
Mm-hmm.
more you do it, the more resilient you become, the
Mm-hmm.
easier it is for you to have that, that I'll just use the word trigger up. You know what? I need to go to this practice, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
know this is what will ground me. When
Mm-hmm.
we have a sporadic practice, it's like, going to the gym every once in a while. If you
Mm-hmm.
go once or twice a year, every time you go in that once or twice a year, what happens? It's like, oh my God, this is so
Right.
awful. I can't do
And
this.
then you're sore, your arms dug around like chicken wings.
Exactly, exactly. We have to build these muscles of true self-care, the muscle of meditation, the muscle of stillness, the muscle of stilling our minds, right? And so that when we are experiencing election stress and fatigue, we
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to shift ourselves, right? We can
Mm-hmm.
empower ourselves in the moment and for the long term. Because frankly, I was thinking about this as I was driving, that every election cycle moving forward will probably be similar to this.
Mhm. At least for
Right?
a while, for sure.
Mhm.
Even no matter which way it goes,
Yep.
there's going to be stress on the other side of it. So the work is not done on November 5th. We're going to need these tools at least every 2 years, if not every, for quite some time. Let me read a
Absolutely.
statistic that I have here that the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, does an annual mental health poll, and it showed that 73% of US adults are feeling increasingly anxious due to this election season. And that's up 37% from 2023,
Oh, wow.
right? So that is whichever side of the coin you sit on, you're experiencing stress because of your beliefs about whatever is happening. So what I actually love about the work that I do is that I don't see red or blue. I see a human.
Mhm.
And whether I agree with whatever it is that they're saying, I can see exactly why they would be experiencing the emotion they're experiencing based on the belief of what they're telling themselves.
Right.
And that's a really important element of your psychology that I think we need to pay close attention to, is that we politics can trigger all the symptoms that you hear about with, so let me go through some of them. Politics can trigger sleep loss, shortened tempers, obsessive thinking, paranoia, uh, intensity of thoughts, uncertainty of outcomes triggers, when we talk about stress, we're talking about the bubbling in your stomach, that might have you on the pot. We're talking about the shoulders being tight and cramping and feeling uncomfortable. We're talking about your blood pressure being higher, right? I want us to start identifying that the symptoms are actually a manifestation of what our brain is telling us at any given time for whatever it is that we're consuming. So this, it feels like um our day-to-day experience is impacted. And I think that's one of the really important things that I want to get across in this particular episode, is that mental health is for everybody. Mental health is for everybody. If you have a brain, you have a mental health landscape.
Uh-huh.
And it's okay for us to acknowledge that and stop thinking of mental health as only being like when a person is ill or
Yes.
when somebody has a diagnosis. I'm putting diagnosis in quotes, right? If we just strip off all of those labels, what we really have is your body, your biology that is manifesting friction, whatever that is on the inside. And then it comes out in our decision making, it comes out in our choices. And then we find ourselves sleeping less, binging on our news channels. Not, I'm listen, as we were creating the content for the show and we were thinking through it, I was thinking to myself, I really should make sure I do some of these things that we I should set a timer to turn this stuff off at a certain time. Like, I know better. So how do we, what are some of the things that you recommend to people when when people come to you about feeling stressed?
Yeah, so to your point about limiting your time, I think that's a really critical one. I am a person who actually, I made the decision a couple of years ago to stop watching the news as frequently as I did. And actually, many times people will say, "Oh, I forgot you don't watch the news." And I'll say, "Yeah, because it can feel overwhelming and it can, pull a lot of energy out of me. And I find that I walk around with this level of sadness. And while
Mhm.
that may not be true for many people, I think that it's important to realize, one, if you could see yourself watching the news, how are you responding, right? And if it's like that and you're watching the news for 4, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, right? Because I know me, as much as I do rest and
Yeah.
calm and peace, I also have the side of me that's like, you better not, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so
Come on,
I
say that one more time.
know.
Hold on. I think we need to acknowledge that because that's a really important point that so many people who would normally feel like I'm a nice person. I'm in a good mood. I'm kind to people, but then you find yourself more snappy, more irritable, more just edgy because we all
Mhm,
have that clap back level, right?
mhm,
That is it becomes more accessible when you're under stress. So when
absolutely.
we look at people having, swerving on the road and getting into arguments that result in somebody being harmed or killed, like these
Mhm,
are the things that are manifestations. We talked about some of the common signs of election stress, and those signs of stress for they can look different depending on the individual.
yeah.
So describe for me, like we talked about the person who might be like more irritable, but what about the person's on the side of feeling like "Ah, I apathy, right? Like, oh, it's too much, I can't keep up with it, I don't even care anymore. But are still feeling that election stress. Any suggestions for them?
I think for them it's still the same. While you might feel like, what, I'm not doing anything, I don't care, there is still this awareness and this knowing that hovers in the background, right?
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that's critical for the person who's apathetic and the person who is so involved, right? They can't think about anything else, is that we have this present moment in this present moment only. Yes, we can plan for the future, but the future has
Mhm.
not happened yet. We have this
Mhm.
moment right now and right here. And so it's really important for us to remember that and for us to come back to that right now.
Mhm.
Also, the reality is that while we have this uncertainty related to the election, uncertainty is a part of life, right? We don't really have control over a whole lot. And so
Mhm.
this, while the implications feel and are very real, there is a level of acknowledgement to the fact that, there's only but so much control that I have. There's only
Mhm.
but so much work that I can do. And
Boundaries.
at the same time,
Yeah.
I have to have some boundaries in order to protect my mental stability, my mental, just the entirety of who I am,
Yeah.
because of the fact that when it manifests, right, that's also something we might not have control over.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to have folk out here having a heart attack because they have stressed and they have gotten so angry about the fact that they can't control the other however many millions of people we have in this country and the electoral college vote,
Yeah,
right?
I think I saw 385 million the most recently. So let me pause on one of those things that you mentioned because I think is really important to highlight. Boundaries is something that we actually don't get a lot of training in. And when people use the word boundaries, sometimes they think of different things. So I want to hone in on that as a skill set that
Hmm.
is important in this election season. And of course, with any trauma in your life, recognizing how to apply mental boundaries. So, I like to define words. When you hear the word boundary, what does it make you think of?
I think about a fence.
Mm,
I think about a fence, right?
right.
And it protects what's in
Mm-hmm.
from getting out, and
Mm-hmm.
it protects what's out from getting in.
Okay.
Right. And it sets a very clear line, right? So you
Right.
know what the expectation is on at least on one side of the fence, right? The other side, it may be murky and unclear, but at least on the side that you're on, you can be clear about what that is so that when somebody walks up to the gate and it says no trespassing, that's the boundary. Right.
I love
And
it.
then we have the responsibility of saying what that is. For me, sometimes it's like, I'm not going to have this conversation with you about X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can keep talking, but I'm not going to engage in the conversation.
Absolutely. Hey, Marion, we're talking about election stress and election self care. How do we develop the tools and the boundaries that we need to make it through this very stressful election season? So, thank you for joining us today. And for those who catch it on the replay, type replay in the chat and feel free to drop your comments. We can come back and respond to them whenever we get a chance to. All right. So, you mentioned boundaries, and I love that concept of the fence, right? And I want to point out that the reason that we're bad at boundaries is because we still have not healed from chattel slavery. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it
Mm-hmm.
real about psychologically what that means. Boundaries mean that I would not touch another person. I would not violate another person. Their body is theirs, and completely I would not do anything to them physically or psychologically if I can help it, right? I won't violate their integrity unless they ask me to be in their space.
Mm-hmm.
We're still having conversations about, could you please not touch me without my consent? Could you please not, take my body and do things with it without my consent? We're still arguing that, if anybody owns somebody because of
Right.
an agreement or contract, verbal, or in front of church and the God or whoever else, that if I are in this space with you, like people still think of owning their children. They still think so. We think of each other in this very possessive way,
Come
and
on now.
we're very psychologically enmeshed that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we start thinking about boundaries, many people have grown up in households that you getting hit on, you might be getting touched on. There's so many things, negative things that happen to people, that psychological boundaries is the last thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to acknowledge your experience. I'm going to appreciate how you may feel about what I said. And if it caused you pain, I'll acknowledge it and change. What? Who's getting that? Right? This
Yeah.
so when we're talking about the concept of boundaries, it's important to start with, I am only responsible for what I like. I tell folks, like, put your put your arms out and point to what you can control.
Yeah.
Your body, your facial expressions, your mouth, your demeanor, your words. It's not under the control of the other person. That's one of those emotional myths that we're going to tackle in the trauma cure. It's coming from your brain's calculation of whatever's going on, and then you create your responses. You feel big emotions, yeah, the big words and big things and other things, extremes come out. And so once we are appreciating that I can only control myself in the now, not like,
Mhm.
can't go back and fix the past, even though we
That's
spend a
right.
lot of time thinking about that, cannot create the future because it's not here yet. The only time I have control of is now. So
Right now.
that's why the mindfulness and the meditation practices, deep breathing, and some of the other things we're going to show you all. We're actually going to do an exercise together. Dr. Alessandra is going to walk us through an exercise for a few minutes, um, just to be able to slow down enough that you can hear yourself think is an important part of recognizing, like, what am I thinking about this got me feeling this way? What behaviors am I doing that have me charged up or keyed up? Might be time to put the phone down, might be time to turn the news off and go outside and take that walk. that you've been saying you were going to take all day long, Alana. I'm sorry. I meant, you scratch that. Right, right. Edit. No, but that's the reality is that boundaries are actually something that we are not very good in thinking about. So any other thoughts on boundaries and like ways that we can keep that in the front of our mind?
I think it's practice, and you start with one thing, start with one boundary, and you will find that you master that, and it becomes maybe not easier, but it is something that you're more intentional about doing. And
Mm,
so I think it's for many things that we do, as you practice it, it becomes a habit. But a habit doesn't become a habit without, some leading steps to drive that.
that's actually a great point. I love that. So before we do, first I'm going to take us through a mindfulness practice of breathing, and then out, Dr. Alex, because we have a little time. I like to build in the practice of these things. So then after we do that, maybe you can show us another exercise that we can do to ground ourselves. But before we go into that, I just want to show and reinforce these psychological stress tips that we've been talking about for those who are just joining us. Today, we're talking about election stress self care. And we're going to talk about the 6 psychological stress tips that we're really trying to reinforce here and then show you some of these through exercising and doing it with you. I hope you can join us. But these tips are really about getting through this election season with our mental health intact. Right. We mentioned at the beginning that mental health is for everyone. If you have a brain, then you are feeling something, right? No, all times of the day, even when you're asleep, your brain is on, it's producing sensations, it's controlling your body. And so, what we do, what I do specifically as Dr. Lana, trauma psychiatrist, is teach about the brain and body connection. And my guest today, Dr. Alessandra, is a pharmacist and a self care architect who really does a lot of work, more so leaning into the work of us healing, learning to rest, learning to tap into those. I call them skills over pills, right? We know the medication is important for people. We want y'all to take your medicine, but it's a skill to even keep up with your medicine
Yeah,
and
it
take
is.
it every day like you're supposed to, right? I had to go get a pill box, like
Uh-huh.
let me keep my stuff organized. Let me make sure I stay on top of these healthy habits and taking my vitamins and supplements and doing the things that I'm supposed to do so that I can make it through this stressful season. So we have a slide, I believe, that just shows some of the 6 psychological tips. Think we will display it, but either way, I'll start going through it. So first, social connection, right? We need to spend more time with our loved ones. And if you don't have family or you don't have friends or people around, go volunteer somewhere in your community, right? Look up something that you can do that gives you that, I call it that burst of dopamine, right? For
Mhm.
sowing into some cause, because the people that you need to be connected to, they're there, right? And any other thoughts about social connection and place things they can do for that?
Yeah, I would say, in this day where we do a lot of texting, to actually pick up the phone and hear a voice and allow a voice to hear you as well is really important. Having real conversations is also part of social connection.
Hmm. Hmm. Next, we talked about mindfulness and grounding techniques, which we're going to show you all a few of those in a few minutes, so stay tuned. When we're talking about practicing mindfulness and grounding techniques, I want to help make sure we have a definition for that, because now we hear these terms thrown around a lot. But mindfulness is the practice of making sure that you are fully present in the now, in your body. And what I mean by that is that so many of we operate with our mind leading what we're doing. So we're thinking about dinner tonight. We're thinking about what's going on next week, next month, next year, right? Which is okay. We need to be able to plan. But there's so many things pulling our mind towards the past and the future that most people spend a very, very small amount of time thinking about and focused on, like, how am I doing right now? what am I doing right now? So mindfulness practice is tuning in with all six of your senses. Well, five. We know we learn about five, but we'll teach you about six more. But it's just really tuning in and learning to intentionally be fully present within yourself, because we spend so much time almost operating in an out of body state because we have so much stress and so many goals and so many things in front of us and got to get it done. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts about mindfulness and grounding? Like, how do you explain it to people?
I use a lot of the language that you have used. I also use this word intention, right? It's about being intentional in what you're doing. So from washing the dishes, when you're washing the dishes, pay attention to washing the dishes, right? Like
Mhm.
I do it too. Sometimes I'm multitasking. There's a podcast that I really want to hear, so I'm washing the dishes while I'm listening to the podcast or
Yeah.
whatever. But it really, I think it also gets down to not multitasking, doing the one
Mm.
thing that you're doing and being fully involved in that thing. So, if we're talking about social connection, when you're talking to your sister on the phone, when I'm talking to my sister on the phone, talking to her, because guess what? When I have become distracted, she'll be like, "What are you doing?"
Right. You're doing something. My best friend calls me out on that all the time. Like, you're doing something. What are you doing? Like, what
Mhm.
you are half mindful. And so thank you for that, because I know that so many of us have been taught multitasking is a good thing. And listen, I used to be like, I'm the multitasking queen. I'm juggling 1,000 eggs, nothing's breaking. I'm like, look, I can do it. I got one, one leg and like,
Right?
and yeah, you can, but then when you get burned out, or when you realize that you're trying to do way too much, and that you've isolated and siloed yourself in this miserable space, that you then are like, I don't like it here. Like, okay, well, you didn't get there by yourself. You got there with the dynamic of how you interacted with people around you. So it's so important to use those intentional moments, that mindfulness, because that's when you see yourself outside of yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? Those times where you sit still long enough to, when I first started doing mindfulness and meditation, because of course, like I'm teaching my patients these practices, but I'm not doing them, right? Because I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. Everything's fine. And then I started using them and was like, ooh, I guess everything wasn't fine. Like, I feel better. This ish actually works. And
Mhm.
it's not that I was shocked, but I was so saddened, because I'm like, imagine if they taught us this when we were children. Imagine if these practices were not demonized or villainized as being like some other people's stuff, but just was taught as like, this is how humans have a healthy mental space. But of
Yeah.
course, we're sort of still pulling out of the hundreds of years of go, 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 work, make your money. Your value is in what you can produce for a company or for yourself. And that,
Yeah.
being get to the millions and the billions and whatever, and not really prioritizing like actually being healthy, happy, peaceful. Like, if I said that to people even 10 years ago, they'd be like, happy? Why is that a goal? Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Like you can be happy when you're dead. You can sleep when you're dead.
and it's like, what kind of sense is that? That's such a tragic way of thinking. And I'm telling on myself, like, I'm saying this because these are the way that we were raised, like the
Mhm.
to put off the gratification. Like, we'll rest in heaven. Like, I know we need to make this heaven on earth so we
How
can
about
rest
that?
here. How about that? How about we get to actually enjoy this life. So let's go to the next point, because I could be on that one forever. So going to limiting your exposure to negativity. I firmly recommend that we go back to reading our news sources. So you can still read articles, and they've made everything so much into video. But from that standpoint, video is made to incite your emotions. It's made to trigger your amygdala. It's made to dump your stress in your body because it's engaging, right? It is an
Mhm.
addiction to wanting to know what's going on. And unfortunately, because violence is entertaining, because this is America.
Nice. Mhm.
And we kind of, let's keep it real, we like violence. We've been on this violence thing from the jump, right? Before 1776. Okay. But and while we're laughing, this is actually why we have so much election stress, because we're consuming so much negativity. So guess what? When you choose to detox from your favorite crime show, from your favorite violent stuff, I mean, I know it's Halloween, do your Halloween show, but really think about the impact of the imagery that you put into your body, because the what your mind receives, your brain just translates into sensations. So you will feel more paranoid, you will feel more nervous. And our media already kind of skews what we get towards the negative. So if you're consuming those things visually, you're getting just an extra big dose of the
Mhm.
medicine. Any thoughts about that? I know we talked about earlier just kind of limiting the time, but any other thoughts about the exposure to negativity? Okay.
And I wouldn't add anything. It gets back to kind of the boundaries, the gatekeeping around what it is that you're consuming. We often think about what we're physically putting in our body through our mouths, but
Hmm.
what we consume through our mind impacts the rest of our bodies.
Absolutely. So after the remaining points are really just about seeking professional help when you realize if you're having difficulty to where it's impacting your ability to function, it's impacting your relationships. A lot of times people ask me like, well, when should I go to therapy? I'm like, now. But you don't even know what's going on. Let me put, it's okay. Not to say that every therapist is the same, because they're not, right?
Right.
And not to say that all things, but if you are able to create a relationship with a good therapist that you can relate to, um, just hearing yourself process some of the things that you may be feeling or hearing, and having a relatively objective person to bounce those things off of, is part of a healing process, because we really need to use more empathy. Empathy being stepping out of ourselves and being able to appreciate the world. I call it the drone view, right? Of
Mhm.
me. If I had a drone view and could zoom you, for a second, just think of yourself watching yourself outside of
Yeah.
your body, you'd
Yeah.
see a lot of behaviors that you would be like, ooh, ooh, okay, I could do this better. I could turn this off. I could maybe not be yelling and screaming at people in my car, or I could, I'm hearing some of the judgmental words and the painful things that I may be saying. Maybe I might realize I'm not listening to my friends and family and shutting them down, and shutting, like, there's just so many things that
Yeah.
we could be doing that we don't recognize. So professional help is always good to get the version so you can see yourself outside of yourself. So let's do some of that mindfulness practice we talked about. Let me see if I don't know, is are you able to play the breathing video, Asia? I don't know if we're able to play it, but we have a video that gives us a visual. But even if we're not able to play that, we can just get comfortable in our chairs. So wherever you are, kind of make sure that you are sitting in something that's comfortable. And we're going to make sure that our feet are on the ground and that we are in connection with what is supporting our bodies. So whether you are sitting down or laying down, just give a little bit of your mental attention to the fact that you're being supported by the earth, and that you are, whether you're on in a building, even if you're on the 10th floor, there are supports that are connecting you to the ground and connecting you to the life source. And so take a deep breath, allow that breath to go into your belly and let it out slowly. And this time, when you take that deep breath, let your belly push down and out. Don't let your shoulders rise. Try to take it all the way down into your belly and release. Inhale and exhale. Inhale one more time and exhale as long as you can. Blow all of the air out. So, just with a 30-second exercise of breathing, I want you to take a moment and just notice your body. Notice any spaces in your body that have tension, like maybe it's in your shoulders, and you can give those shoulders a shrug, hard shrug, and then put them back down and allow them to relax. And sort of scan through your body and send some energy and attention to all of the parts of your body that may have some aches. And take a deep breath and blow those aches out with that breath. So I'm doing this way because when we are doing mindfulness, and that completes the exercise. Thank you for participating. Um, and I'm doing it this way and showing you that you don't really need any kind of structure. Sometimes we get caught up in like, I don't know how to do breathing exercises. Do I hold it for 3 seconds or 4 seconds? Do I do box breathing? Do I do triangle breathing? Don't complicate it.
Yep.
It's just breathing. But what you're doing is you're challenging yourself to have the awareness that you are in control of you, right? The human body is fascinating to me. I always like to, and then we're going to have you do a demonstration as well, Dr. Alessandra. But the human body is so fascinating to me because it is truly the most advanced technology on earth. And every time we think we know and we've got it down, we realize there's more and more layers in here to learn. But when we are in the space of doing meditation and mindfulness, you actually start to appreciate those different spaces in your body and things that you just don't think about on a regular basis. And your body will breathe without you telling it to, right? Automatically. There's so many things that happen automatically. Your emotions are created automatically. But just like your breathing, where you can speed it up or slow it down, and if you choose to control it and slow it down, you notice that it helps to settle your body. Your emotions are the same way. Wherever they are, whatever roller coaster you might find yourself on, it is being fueled by a belief or something you've been taught to tell yourself. So, in this space with so much going on about this election stress, understanding that the way your body is designed does not change, no matter what the stress of the situation. So, applying skills like grounding and breathing and meditation and quiet time, rest.
Hmm.
It seems so, it's almost so simple that it's like, why
It
don't
can't
we
just
do?
be that.
Yeah, this can't be the answer. It's got to
Or
be more
it's got to be
complicated.
more complicated because we
Well,
choose the difficult path.
it's all we know. It's
Hmm.
it's the human experience right now. But what if we chose to do a reset?
Hmm.
What if we chose to evolve? What if we chose to see ourselves as like, okay, I'm gonna treat this goddess better. I'm gonna treat this god better. I'm gonna treat this temple, this divinity better because I understand that the things that come out of my brain are so powerful that they're driving the experience that I'm having.
Hmm.
So let's do another exercise, Dr. Alessandra, because that always feels so good to me. I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, I do want to just add a piece about the breath because I'm also going to do a breath exercise. And what also makes the breath powerful is that when you are focused on your breath, you're focused on right now. You can't go anywhere else but be here right now with your breath. The other thing that I find to be powerful about the breath is that it is a thing that connects us to the universe. And if you are a believer in higher power or God, that's the thing that directly connects us to spirit, right? That's where we get our first breath from. And
Yeah.
so when you are able to center on your breath, it really expands
Mm-hmm.
and it also brings things in for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, let me guide you through another breathing exercise, and I will give you an abbreviated format for this particular
They
exercise.
got to come to the trauma cure to get the whole thing. Go ahead.
You got to come to the trauma cure and you will get more of it. Some people refer to this breath as the ascending breath or the descending breath, depending on how you do it. I'd like to invite you to get back into that stance that you were in. You can actually continue to sit with your feet resting on the ground, or if you're able to recline, feel free to do that as well. You can close your eyes if you feel safe to do so. Otherwise, I invite you to soften your gaze and allow your gaze to rest on one thing. I invite you to take a slow breath in through your nose and exhale, release the breath out of your mouth. This time, as you inhale, allow the container of your torso to expand fully. And when you're ready, exhale and release out of your mouth. Now I invite you to bring your awareness to the soles of your feet. When you're ready for your next inhale, take a slow inhale through your nose that rises from the soles of your feet and goes all the way up to and through the crown of your head. And when you're ready for the exhale, exhale from the crown of your head all the way down to and through the soles of your feet. Let's do that again. This time, as you take your inhale, inhale with the sense of warmth, the sense of peace, the sense of calm. And as you exhale, exhale, allowing peace, warmth, and calm to filter and flow through and over your entire body. Let's do that again. Inhale from the soles of your feet, slowly, gently, all the way up to the crown of your head. And exhale from the crown of your head all the way back down to the soles of your feet. Now bring your awareness to your ankles. Take a slow inhale from your ankles all the way up to the crown of your head. Exhale, release from the crown of your head down to your ankles. Bring your awareness to your knees and inhale from your knees up to the crown of your head. Exhale, crown of head back down to your knees. Bring your awareness to your hips and inhale from your hips up to the crown of your head. Exhale, let it go, crown of head down to your hips. Bring your awareness to your navel and inhale from your navel to the crown of your head. Exhale, crown of head to navel. Bring awareness to your heart center and inhale from the center of your heart to the crown of your head. Exhale, crown of head to heart center. Inhale, bring your awareness to the center of your eyebrows. Inhale from the center of your eyebrows to the crown of your head. Exhale, crown of head to eyebrow center. And then bring your awareness down to the soles of your feet once more. Inhale, soles of feet to the crown of your head. And as you exhale, warmth, peace, all the way back down through the body to the soles of the feet. And take a moment and just notice. Notice where you've softened. Even notice areas where you still may hold tension or stress. And allow yourself to settle and to be in this residue of softness, of stillness, of quiet. And when you're ready, flutter the eyes open, roll the shoulders, and intentionally move into whatever is next for you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Alessandra. And I hope that whoever you are, wherever you are, you bathe in the residue of rest. I love that. I want to point out that this is not for man or woman. This is not about masculine or feminine. This is about being in touch with your spiritual self, your psychology, The root word of psychology is psyche, spirit. And mental health is spiritual. It is your invisible self. It's your thoughts, it's your emotions, it's that part of you that you can't put your finger on, but that exists in every moment of your day because you are a creator. So let me point out some things that could help you make the most peaceful, not it's not going to be stress free, but as reduce stress as possible election day. Plan ahead, right? First of all, don't wait on election day. Early voting is open right now, just about everywhere.
Yeah.
Do not stress yourself out by waiting till the last minute. You will be in long lines. You will be hungry or thirsty because they've outlawed even giving people snacks and things. Like the shenanigans are likely to happen on election day, so make it easy. Let's get this in the bag beforehand, okay?
Mhm.
So go vote early. Plan ahead for things like childcare and transportation. Call your people, check on those older relatives that we don't need them driving themselves. You
Right.
get those folks where they need to be, and don't wait for them to reach out to you. You do the reaching out. Limit your exposure to news, y'all. Folks, at this point, I'll tell you how it's gonna go. Somebody gonna say something wild. Somebody somebody's gonna respond on the other side. And that's what at this point, read if you have things you still want to research. If they've done a good job of explaining themselves, it will be on websites and there will be details that will be documented about things that are specifically to you. So go to the candidates' websites and get to know them. That's important before you go. There are sample ballots that you can get online so that you can know who these characters are that you're going to be electing to be your representative. Those people represent you. So they may not necessarily look like you, but do they behave, think, and act the way that you would under those circumstances? Make sure you connect with your loved ones. You don't have to do this alone. Sometimes we feel so disconnected because of all the things going on and we get super busy. But as Dr. Alessandra mentioned, pick up the phone, call them. It's different from texting and tweeting and these social media has created superficial connections, and
Mhm.
we need to actually have real conversations with real people because that real conversations are what change people's hearts and minds. And then also make sure you're practicing these self-care activities over and over again. We said what? The P word: practice, practice, practice. You are not going to be good at doing these things when you first start. The first times that I was trying to do mindfulness practice, I'd be doing my practice and then 10 minutes later, I'm doing my grocery list and I'm in the kitchen and I'm like, how did I get here? I was supposed to be doing
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
Okay. So we know that the default for the human brain right now is that it's so busy that it's leading us instead of us leading
Leading.
it. Yeah. So mindfulness practice, if you notice that as Dr. Alessandra was taking us through those different levels, your mind went where you told it to go. And so many of us walk around thinking that we can't control our brain or emotions. It's just a product of what's going on around us. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. If you don't leave demystifying mental health with anything else, I want you to know that the evolved way of understanding yourself is that you do have control over what you think. You have control over what you believe. Therefore, you have control over what you do, which means you have far more control than you realize over your outcomes. So,
So empowering.
last but not least, practice gratitude, right? In this space that we're in, I say I put gratitude on everything because even the stressful things, even the traumatic things, they're often the fuel that gets us to the next level if we choose to use them that way. Grief and loss and all of these painful things can become powerful lessons and can become a slingshot to creating the future that we actually really do want to experience. So, in these last couple minutes, Doc, please tell us where they can find you, let them know how to follow you, and let them know if there's any programs that you have coming up.
Sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. You can follow me on Instagram at alessandra.poroj. Poroj, Poroj. You can also find me on Facebook, Alessandra Poroj. I think I'm the same on LinkedIn. And I have a program coming up beginning the first Tuesday in December. It is a series that just quickly, it's after winter rest. It's an opportunity for us to really slow down, to tap into the energy of winter, as well as to slow down, knowing that we're approaching the end of the year, and to enter this season from a different posture, from a posture of rest instead of a posture of busyness, and a posture of going. It's a 3-week series, 60 minutes of restorative yoga, which is a very slow, a very gentle, a very supported practice that really allows you to be able to connect deeply with yourself, and then allows you to be able to connect with others. So
Yeah,
if you're
I
interested,
definitely
reach out.
I need that. Sign me up. I will be there because guess what? You run out and you get a trainer every year to do what? Try to get you busy, get you up, get you exercising, trying to help you lose weight and whatever goals we do every year. We need a trainer for rest. It's something
Mhm.
that we have not been taught. And engaging in rest is where you get your downloads, where you get your best ideas, where you get your
Absolutely.
healing. So you all check out Dr. Alessandra, and thank you for joining us today. And I'll just remind you, it's too late to get tickets for the trauma cure because the sales window is closed, but you can catch us next year when we do it. But for those who are in already in the trauma cure, I'm so excited that you will be starting tomorrow with our 3-day workshop where we're going to dive deeper into mental health, into trauma recovery, and how empathy is the cure for what ails humanity. But we also have the Trauma Recovery Academy membership that's available at any time. If you're interested in my coaching program, of course, all you guys need to do is connect with me. And so I will close this out here just saying thank you so much for joining us today. This was Demystifying Mental Health. I'm Dr. Alauna, trauma psychiatrist, and go vote. Okay, go shoot, log off, go vote.